Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the ever-expansive Comic Book Vault. This is a special episode of the Vault. This is going to be probably a special, longer version, and today I'm talking with Tori GNR1.
Hey guys.
Dan is filling in for Vince this time, because we're going to be talking about Spider Island.
And I like Spider-Man.
Yeah, and Dan likes Spider-Man, and we both read this, and we thought it would be interesting to do a vault on it. Usually we do vaults on older stuff, but sometimes I'd like to do things like this when something ends and I want to talk about something on the whole. It was 6 parts in an epilogue in the Amazing Spider-Man book, written by Dan Slott, and then there were like all events, a lot of offshoots, and then there were a couple of issues that tied straight in from Venom. So we're going to be talking about just the stuff from Amazing, and we'll talk about the Venom issues a little bit too, because we both read those. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Dan, let me ask you this question first. How long have you been reading Slott's run?
I've been reading it since he was writing Amazing with the rotating team before, and I was reading it then, and I've been reading it since then, so I've been on board since he started his solo run.
Oh, wow, okay. Because I just couldn't get on board with the stuff with the extra solo writers, and so I didn't start reading it again until actually pretty much now. Pretty much Spider-Man. I mean, I read Big Time and really liked that, but not enough to just keep going with it because I still wasn't real sure about it.
Yeah.
And then I got a little interested in the whole spider foo thing and thought that sounded fun. And I just forgot about it and didn't read it, so I guess I should have done that. But anyway, I don't know. I'm just going to start out the gate by saying I think that this is where Slott has really, really hit his stride. Again, having not read a lot of his stuff before, but I mean, I just felt like, oh, and now Spider-Man's fun again. Yay! This is what I've been waiting for.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. I think what Slott does really well with this story is he juggles the soap opera stuff with the Spider-Man action really well, and he does the soap opera stuff well, which he kind of dropped the ball on before. Before it was kind of like Peter Parker would come home to Carly Cooper almost figuring out he's Spider-Man. Instead of questioning him, she'd sleep with him, and it was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So I feel like in this story he really did that kind of stuff well. All the relationship stuff that he went through made sense, and there was a clear kind of message that the story was trying to send. And I really enjoyed it reading it again. When I first read it, I didn't really like it too much in issues, but when I went back and reread it for this, I liked it a lot.
I think it reads really well altogether also, although I had the opposite reaction. I actually enjoyed reading it more as it went on in issues, just because I feel like it's a little short. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, I don't think it quite went on long enough. Now, I think, again, part of that, and it's funny for me to say that about an event, although I appreciate that this is an event that happens in a monthly book instead of having to be its own miniseries. I really appreciated that, because this very easily could have been another one of those.
Yeah.
Like Shadowland. I was like, okay, if we can do this in Amazing, why couldn't we have done Shadowland in Daredevil? I don't understand that.
Yeah, definitely.
But anyway, like all these other events, we have all the tie-ins. And so I guess if you read all the tie-ins, it feels bigger and it feels like it takes longer. But most of the tie-ins, and I read a few of them, and most of them were one-shots. There were a few, there were 3 or 4 miniseries, and I didn't read those, but I read some of the one-shots. And a lot of them kind of added extra stuff to this, but like a lot of these kinds of offshoots, you didn't really need them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I think this could have been Spider-Man's No Man's Land. I mean, I really think that. I think it could have gone for I was going to say a year, but this being a twice-a-month book, it could have gone for 6 months and been 12 issues, and I think it would have been great.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I don't think it really picked up until the 3rd issue, and again, going back after knowing, everything that happens, I enjoyed the first 2 issues more than I did before. Once you get to the 3rd issue and they bring in Reed Richards and you find out all the science stuff, I think is when it gets really, really, really fun. At the point where it nabbed me was when they went, and if you have superpowers, you're immune.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Ooh, now this is really interesting. You know what I mean? like now we know, who's going to get powers and who's not. And then once we find out that anybody who's in the vicinity is going to get them, then suddenly superheroes who don't have powers end up turning into these spider creatures. And, Hawkeye is with spider powers and stuff. I mean, it got really, really fun and crazy and ridiculous.
Yeah. Especially when J. Jonah Jameson got spider powers. That was hilarious.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that Dan Slott is generally too jokey with Spider-Man? Because a lot of people say that.
Yeah, it really depends, because, I don't know, Slott's really hit or miss for me, because sometimes he'll be like, the comedy will be the objective of the story he's trying to tell, and that's not what Spider-Man is. Everything will be a setup for a gag, and he'll write Peter as kind of like an incompetent, and that's not really who Peter is. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. He should have some idea of what he's doing. So, I don't like when he writes him like that, but here it was, for the most part, Peter's character was fine. I mean, he wasn't proactive enough for my taste when I was reading it in issues. It made sense when I read it all together, because it was like Peter, he needed to take responsibility and save the people over trying to figure out what was going on with the Jackal. But in the story, he doesn't try to figure out what's going on, like with the Queen and the Jackal at all. He's kind of reactionary.
That's a really good point. I think all of that could have worked better had Slott driven the point home a little bit more that Peter felt responsible for this, because that comes up and then it kind of drops.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one point where he's kind of like, ooh, I wonder if this is somehow my fault. And hey, that makes sense. Everybody's got your power set now.
Yeah.
And then, and so it seems like he should have been more preoccupied with that, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, when you think about it, Reed Richards and pretty much everyone, everyone else in the book does, even Venom does more work than Spider-Man until the last issue in trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, and even then, he doesn't even come up with a plan until Mary Jane kind of smacks him in the face a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was a great scene, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta say, any problem I had with this was completely redeemed by the epilogue.
Oh, yeah. That's where it kind of turned around for me, was the last issue in the epilogue, where, especially when Peter's saving the city and Mary Jane says, I love you, and he's like, well, what was that? And she's like, nothing. And then, in the epilogue issue where they come together again, I was just so happy. I just couldn't contain my excitement when I saw that happening, and Carly Cooper breaking up with him, because I can't stand that character.
Yeah, and a lot of people had that reaction too. And of course, like I said, I hadn't been reading this much before this, so I didn't have, the pent up hatred a lot of people had for that character. but at the same time, I hate that Peter and Mary Jane aren't together, and I hate that since Mary Jane's not around, he still has to have love interests. I'm like, I don't understand what the difference is between, okay, well, he can't be with Mary Jane, but he can be with other people. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't get that. Aren't you going to run into exactly the same problems? Mm-hmm. And you can't really fix those problems just by making it somebody who's not like Mary Jane. Like,
right. It always seemed like a really shallow relationship. It's like they're both smart and do science things. They should be together. Not necessarily.
She has a tattoo. Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I read the issue where she got that.
Oh, I despise that issue.
But yeah, you're talking earlier about how you said sometimes Slott will write Peter like he's incompetent and like he's forgotten what stuff he used to do. And then here I thought it was kind of like he was almost missing the old days of Spider-Man and trying to bring it a little bit more around, not like he's just, pandering to the old fans or like trying to make it feel like a 90s comic or something like that. I don't mean that. I just mean like, I sure miss getting to write Mary Jane. Hey, I know what I'll do. I'll write Mary Jane,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it helps a lot too. They hit kind of the whole thing that Spider-Man's about thematically in the story, like Peter shouldering a great responsibility, and he's kind of stripped of his great power here because he's on the same playing field as everyone else, and he still chooses to make responsible choices and ends up saving the city while everyone else is using their powers for personal gain, and kind of showcasing.
He has to remind him, it's not your powers that make you that make you who you are, it's you. And
yeah.
that you have this, you know, you have this weight on your shoulders that says that I have to help people. And all these other people have spider powers, but they're not doing that necessarily.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the great thing I think about this story is it showcases that Peter Parker is the most important thing in this book. It's not the powers, it's not the costume, it's the man behind the mask, and that's what Spider-Man's been since his inception, so.
And I also really enjoyed, and I think this is what could have made the book a little bit longer had we had a little bit more of this. I really enjoyed all the social stuff.
Yeah.
The like, okay, people have spider powers now. What does that do to your society? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that's the other part that really nabbed me when they started doing a lot of stuff with that, where you have all these people with powers trying to leave the city because they don't live there. And then you have all these people trying to get into the city because they want powers. It was kind of I know I keep mentioning this, but I think that Slott had to have been thinking about this a little bit. It's like the anti-No Man's Land in that way, you know.
Yeah.
It's like you know, because No Man's Land was about cutting off everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the city is in crazy chaos, and then here the city is also in crazy chaos, but people want to get in because they want these powers, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I have a feeling that this wasn't an event when it was thought up, like, and Marvel kind of pushed it that way. But that's just my theory. It was just kind of a story Slott wanted to tell.
It's that way.
Yeah. And because everything you really need to know that's important to the story and understanding basically what's happening. Like, there's a few things that are left out, like you don't know how Nora Winters is dating the new Hobgoblin now, but that's irrelevant to the ongoing story and amazing.
Right, yeah. And also here they leave out the entire Venom and Anti-Venom fight and let that happen in Venom.
Yeah.
That made sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
There's a part of me that just as a comics reader, doesn't really love the idea that I have to go read another book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To read the one I'm reading. But the thing is, I don't think you do. You're given that information. The thing is, the Venom book needed Anti-Venom to show up in that book somewhere. That's part of the thing. And then at the end of this, Brock's not going to be Anti-Venom anymore. So, like, when's that going to happen? Right. I felt like that was kind of part of it. But at the same time as I usually resist that, since I was already reading both books, and it happened naturally, and I was surprised by it, I really, really enjoyed it. I go over to Venom, and they both come out in the same week, and we see scenes get recycled between both books from different people's perspectives.
Yeah, and
so cool.
Yeah, I really liked that too. I enjoyed, especially the fight with the Queen from Venom's perspective, and then they did it in Amazing. That was really cool.
And then in Venom, what you get there that you don't really get here is just how kind of crazed Eddie Brock has gotten about his whole like crusade for God that he thinks he's on.
Yeah, that was really creepy and interesting.
It was super twisted, and I loved it. And that was one big thing that was missing from this, because you do have to go to Venom to get much of that. If you don't read Venom, I think you could miss that entirely, where it's like, okay, well, Anti-Venom, he's got kind of a Jesus complex, but beyond that, like, you don't really get just how far that goes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like you said, they have a little bit of it, but you don't really get much of it, and I think that's kind of what we were talking about before, how I don't think this was written as an event before, and maybe this was originally planned to be a little bit longer where they would have had that stuff in there, but I'm kind of glad, honestly, that Rip Remender handled that stuff, because I feel like Slott might have played that up for a joke and it wouldn't have been sick and twisted, because Remender does that stuff so well.
Yeah, and also it going into the Venom book, it played into a lot of stuff that was going on in that book already, and made it for Flash Thompson, which is what that book is about. I gotta ask you this: what do you feel about what they're doing with Kane?
I'm really, really liking it, actually.
Really?
Yes, I'm loving it.
Boy, can I say I'm on the fence about it?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I liked the first issue of Scarlet Spider, but I was really on the fence about it here.
You're talking about in just Spider Island specifically?
Yes. because I felt like it was just an excuse to get another Ben Reilly character out. I mean, we've never seen Kane like this before.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, Kane's always been the way he's been, and then now they contrive a way for him to be like Peter Parker, and I'm like, I don't know, like...
Yeah, I can agree with you in the Spider Island thing. Like, I really like the first issue of Scarlet Spider and what they're doing with his character there, because they're actually addressing why he'd be like that. But,
they are, yeah. They're doing great there. I'm just saying, I questioned it here, and Slott's not writing Scarlet Spider.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was kind of weird seeing that he just kind of comes out of the anti-venom pit and he's like, hey, I'm Peter Parker now with long hair.
By the way, as a side note, was it kind of weird to you, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but like where he's like, oh no, I'm keeping your costume, and then the Scarlet Spider's got a totally different costume.
Yeah, that is kind of weird. Like he has it in the backpack, but it's a different costume. I don't know, maybe he modified it on his way on that truck that he was stuck to.
Maybe it's a symbiote. We don't know. I'm kidding.
That would be funny.
That would be awful. What did you think about the Jackal reveal at the end?
I thought it was kind of good because I had no idea what the Jackal's motivation was the entire story. So I was like, I'm glad that he's picking this up and taking it somewhere because
it was rushed though. It was like, oh, and by the way, I'm not dead.
Yeah, it was rushed, but I thought it was kind of funny where like they're like, oh, the screen said you were the original, and he acknowledges the fact that he's a mad scientist and he can get screens to say whatever they want.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
Yeah. I thought that was, the gag kind of saved it for me. I don't know. It was rushed, and I thought it was kind of weird that among the chaos they're cleaning up, no one notices the Jackal's like in one of the things, like helping clean up.
I thought he handled the whole in the epilogue. I thought he handled the whole everybody's gonna be naked thing like really tastefully.
Yeah, he did.
It was funny, but it was also really tasteful. I mean, I liked that we saw all these different people's like reactions to like what would these characters we know, what would they be like if they woke up and they were totally naked? Like which ones would that freak out and which ones wouldn't care? Like Hercules, who's just like, look, naked people, I love that.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So Hercules doesn't technically have superpowers?
I don't know. I've never read any Hercules before.
I mean, did you find yourself thinking that with some people, though, where you're like, wait a minute, I thought you had superpowers?
Yeah.
I guess you don't.
Yeah. That is kind of weird.
And I must have missed something with Captain America.
Yeah.
Why did he get picked to be the Spider King, and how does that even work?
I guess the Queen was a product of the super soldier thing. And that's another thing I gotta bring up. I didn't really get the Queen's motivation in the context of this story.
Well, when you get to that last issue before the epilogue, she's just, I'm going to rule the world. And I'm like, oh, good for you. You guys
exactly.
Everywhere. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. She's like, I will make Spider Kingdom and rule the world. Like, and until that last issue, like when I was reading in issues, that's one of the reasons I didn't like it. I was like, I have no idea why the villains are doing anything.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I just assumed that because the Queen was a character I'd never seen before, I just didn't understand.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to have read that stuff, you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
I mean, that's kind of, I mean, it should be able to stand alone as a story by itself, if you know what I mean.
It should, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, that's the one thing. I do have to say though, no, you can't totally give it a pass, but I do appreciate that it was a plan and it didn't just like happen.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I
mean, I'm glad that it was a villain plan that caused this, and it wasn't, some kind of weird, like, accidental airborne virus or something.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Slott's really good with the villains. Some of the best issues that he's done, that I've read, have been villain-centric issues. Like, the most recent one he did with the Sinister Six, I loved.
Yeah, that was awesome. And I thought Jameson was super, super cool.
Yeah, I really liked what they did when he confronted Smythe. That was a really cool scene.
Oh, I forgot. Bring us Smythe back. Like, this is the perfect time to do stuff with Spider Slayers.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think Slott has a really good handle on that sort of thing, too, because he's obviously a Spider-Man fanboy,
mm-hmm.
which I think sometimes hurts him a little bit.
Yeah.
But I felt like he buckled down some here, you know, like I gotta mention, this is a point, Eric made when he and I were talking on the phone about this the other day, or he and I were talking about Slott on Spider-Man, and he hasn't, I don't think he's read or maybe he just hasn't finished Spider Island, but one of the things he said that bugs him about Slott sometimes is that it seems like he's so giddy about getting to write Spider-Man that he's not telling enough story.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yay, I'm writing Spider-Man, right? I'm like, okay, like all he wants to do is mention as much Spider-Man knowledge as he can because he knows it and he wants to show us that he knows. But here he used it.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that that's a really good point that you made about him being a fanboy and stuff, because I feel like Dan Slott writes Peter Parker as himself sometimes, and Peter Parker will act like an excited fanboy. He doesn't here in this story specifically, but there's some, like, I remember one of the issues, he, like, got his picture in a science magazine, and he was, like, screaming his head off, swinging around the city, like, I'm in a science magazine, this is awesome! And,
I don't really see him doing that.
Yeah, me either.
He's just not a giddy little kid.
Yeah.
Spider-Man's not.
Right,
Dan Slott is, but Spider-Man's not.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Slott. The thing is, I like that he brings some of that, because he made Spider-Man lighthearted and fun again.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And so we needed that. But I'm glad that he seems to be getting a little bit out of that. And now he's a little bit more nose to the grindstone. You know, it's a little more. Now I got to tell some stories.
Right. Exactly. And I think Spider Island is going to be the turning point, and I hope that it continues the quality that he's had through this story. And I mean, I loved the first issue that they did after Mark Waid finished with the crossover, the most recent one we were talking about before. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
I just hope he continues this quality, because before it was really, really hit or miss.
Do you think that he's setting up Spider-Man or Peter Parker and Mary Jane to get back together?
I hope so. It looks like it, and seems to be one of those writers that likes to set things up and pay them off a little bit more down the line. Like, he doesn't, like...
And I like that sometimes.
Yeah, me too. I like long-form storytelling. I miss that. I don't necessarily like when everything's just one little contained arc and then we move on and don't address anything from before. I like how comics used to be, like, long-form development of the character, and that's how Peter Parker was when it first started. It was one elongated coming-of-age story up until he became married. So I'm really glad. We
also have these little 1-2 part stories that aren't hugely connected to those things, and Slott's doing some of that too.
Yeah, exactly, and that's really fun, and it makes the book accessible, so power to him for that.
Well, Dan, let's go ahead and go on to a trivia question, shall we? Last week's trivia question was, name both winners of Stan Lee's Who Wants to Be a Superhero. Went for 2 seasons, named both winners. The first person to get it right was the J City 96, who didn't even give us the superhero names. He just wrote down the real people, Matthew Atherton and Jarrett Crippen, and that's right. I'll also mention the first person who wrote down the actual superhero names of those people, and it was OA Cape Crusader O, and of course it was Feedback and the Diffuser. So good job to both of you. And Dan has penned a trivia question for us this week. So, Dan, go ahead. What is today's trivia question?
All right, this is pretty simple. What was the name of the third person to wear the Green Goblin costume and use it as a persona?
The third Green Goblin. So if you think you know it, leave your answer in the comments below, and Vince and I will be sure and mention the first person who got it right on next week's episode of the Comic Book Vault. Dan, did you know that the Comic Book Vault is a vast and wonderless wonderland of comic books that you can both purchase things from and donate things to? And you can go to eBay right now, see what we have for sale at the Comic Book Vault, putting up lots and lots more stuff than I used to, so check it frequently if you are looking for cool old books. We are geeksnotnerds.com, and click on the Comic Vault. And if you have anything you'd like to send us to review, you can always do that through our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. And thanks, as always, for listening to the Comic Book Vault. Dan, thanks a lot for being with us, man.
Oh, no problem. This was a ton of fun. I'm glad to be here.
And see you again next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.